All right, so this is the National PID Strategies Interest Group, where we talk about the emerging and developing national PID strategies in various countries across the world. And this particular topic for today is aligning regional and national policies, though you will also hear in general just updates from different case studies today. Oh, mine's not moving forward, but I can see it there, so that's all right. Okay, so I want to acknowledge and celebrate the first Australians on whose traditional lands we meet today and acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. I'm actually live, work and play in Brisbane on Turrbal and Yagara country. Okay, so welcome anyone who's new to RDA. Is anyone new to RDA? Couple of people, welcome. I hope you enjoy your first plenary, and it's the start of many more. Okay, so I'm Natasha Simons. I'm the Director of National Coordination at the Australian Research Data Commons, and I'm also co-chair of the National PID Strategies Interest Group. And my co-chairs can introduce themselves when they come up for their particular bits, but my co-chairs, John Aspler and Hana Heringova, are here as well to present the session for you today. So here is our agenda. So I'm going to just give a bit of an outline of the interest group and what our work has been to date. And then we are going to do a bit of a Menti poll, so a bit of engagement from you. And then some case studies 2025, an update on the ones that we've collected. And then we're going to hear some lightning talks. Now, the goal is 5 minutes each, and I've seen the slides. So it could go for quite a lot longer than 5 minutes each, but we'll see how we go. And then there's plenty of time for open discussion as well. Okay, sorry, I can't see these on my screen for some reason. Here we go. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so why do we have a National PID Strategies interest group? Because National PID Strategies are relatively new, and they're an emerging developing area, and in fact a lot of PID strategies change fairly rapidly over time. I know the Australian one has, and a lot of countries as well have developed a national PID strategy a few years ago and has actually changed, deepened, taken up different topics, over time. So we really want to facilitate information exchange between the people who are developing or delivering those national PID strategies, and we really want to have international alignment and coordination between the strategies, and that will help us, hopefully, to streamline efforts. And that's the umbrella and the role that the Research Data Alliance can play in connecting us all. Okay, so we did do some work. Before there was an interest group, we had a working group, and we produced some outputs through that working group because, as you would all know, a working group has a really fixed amount of time in RDA, generally 18 months, and there are set deliverables. And what came out of that work was we collected 9 country case studies, and that it was an open call for case studies, so the ones that we published were the ones that we got. And out of that, we produced a guide to developing national PID strategies. There's no kind of formula for doing this. Everybody does it differently, but there are some common elements. So we drew those out and produced a guide saying, here are the common elements between these PID strategies. And we turned that into a checklist. And we really want to pay thanks to the RDA Tiger Group, who helped to make those outputs look really appealing, because they weren't. They just looked like text, and they turned it into something really, really nice. So here are some adoption stories around national PID strategies. So we have Veronique talking about the national PID strategy in France, and this is just some use that they had for the RDA recommendations. So providing guidance and the diversity of case studies was really useful for them to help inform their development of their national PID strategy. Similarly, in the USA, they also used the outputs of the working group to help to inform and spark the discussion that they had around their conversation for a national PID strategy. And also in Ireland, we'll hear from Michelle Doran today about the work that they're doing in Ireland as well. And just the way that the work that we did actually helped raise awareness for them around what was happening in other countries. And similarly, there's a nice quote from Hana here, my co-chair, about how it helped them to not reinvent the wheel. So all of those adoption stories are actually now in a white paper called The Value of RDA for Policy series, and within that there's a section on the value of RDA for national PID strategies. And to produce that, Hana and I participated in a couple of pre-workshops. She did one time zone and I did the other, and then that was all written up into this document if you want to read it there. We also have a lot of relevance to other RDA groups, so other PID groups like the PID interest group or the PIDs for instruments interest group or PIDs for tools, that they're all groups that intersect with this one, and also policy groups within RDA as well, developing policies around open science could refer to the work of the national PID strategies, and also funder groups as well. So there's a funder group meeting on Wednesday that will, John, are you speaking at that one as well? Yeah, that John and I will speak at again as well. So our current focus, so this is the feedback we got from the last plenary, so a bit of a carryover from there. That was an online plenary and we had an open survey, what would you like the IG to do? And it was around facilitating communication and collaboration, collecting more case studies and examples because people really get a lot from that. Updating the working group outputs. So the case studies that we currently based our guide on were collected in 2023. And as I mentioned, a lot of the PID strategies have moved on fairly significantly from there. So there's a need to collect new and updated case studies, and you are welcome to submit one anytime. So that, and then the co-chairs can work to update those materials. And also to provide links to those resources as well. I would really love it if there was kind of a one-stop shop where you could find a lot of these national PID strategies and information about them. I don't think the RDA platform can support that kind of thing, and if someone else knows that it can, I would love to hear about that, but I don't know how at this point. So just have a think about what brought you here today and what you hope to get from this session. Okay, I'll hand to my co-chair, John.
All right, so my job is to run us through a Menti poll very briefly, and that's it. So hopefully this all works. What you should do is go to menti.com and put in that number, or use the QR code to go directly to the first question. Let me just switch us over to that. So of course, often the questions we ask here are, where are you from? But I think a more interesting question for this particular session is, what national or regional strategy do you fall under? Please click on the location. You can start to see locations popping up here. So a lot of folks from Australia. But we've got some Canada, some Europe, some Korea, maybe? It's a big dot. I'll give you all another 10, 15 seconds before we move on. All right, so the next question, before I queue it up, I was going to do a multiple choice question because it would be easiest that way. It's about the maturity of the PID strategy in your nation or region, but tying that answer to a specific country is not possible in the multiple choice approach. So what I'm doing is I'm doing free text here. If you could please put in country : and then your options are emerging, implementing, or optimizing. Is it a new early stage? You're starting to talk about it. Are you actively implementing, or is this something you've already implemented and you're just optimizing in some late stage work? If you could please add your country, as I mentioned, that would be ideal. Thank you very much to the UK person.
Oh, disagreement. UK implementing, UK emerging.
Interesting. I would also say Canada's implementing, not emerging. And yeah, please feel free to add nuance if, for example, you haven't even started and this is something you would like to be doing in your region. That's not an option here, I guess. But yeah, we've got a lot of, so no one's optimizing, which makes a lot of sense to me. But a lot of emerging and a lot of implementing, which is great to see. Oh, it's yeah, it's Canada's definitely implementing. All right, I'll give it another maybe 10, 15 seconds and then we'll move on from this to actual presentation. What is NL? Oh, of course, it's Newfoundland and Canada, which is why I was confused. They were the last province to join, so. Okay, all right, yeah, let's end that there. I'll bring us back to the slides. So now, yeah, I'll pass it to Hana. Thanks, everyone.
Hi guys, I'm going to give you a quick update on the case studies, country case studies that we are collecting this year. So in 2023, the working group for national PID strategies used a specific template to collect the country case studies. The template was discussed, agreed upon by the whole group, and as Natasha already mentioned, there were no eligibility criteria for submitting a country case study, which I believe is something that we are going to be following this year as well.
Use the mouse.
Mm-hmm. Oops. Nothing's happening. Can you help me, someone, please? So I can see the slide, so I'm gonna continue. Meanwhile, so in 2023, 9 case studies were collected. Thank you so much. From the countries that you can see on the slide, and the case studies or the template actually included the following sections: who were the lead organizations for the PID strategy? What was the scope? What were the drivers of the PID strategies? What was the development, the key features, key infrastructure, or infrastructures, what were the priority persistent identifiers, and what was the planned impact and monitoring. Now, in 2025, we are collecting updated country case studies or new ones. So far, we have a country case study from France, the Czech Republic, and United Kingdom, as far as I'm aware. Obviously, the Australian and Canadian ones are on the way, soon to be expected. But we are obviously looking forward to anyone's contribution. So hopefully we will soon have more. We have an updated case study template on top of what I already mentioned. There are 4 new items. There is a sort of self-assessed strategy maturity. We are looking forward to hear about regional alignment, whether there are some policies, some regional policies or wider regional policies that the national PID strategy aligns with. What are the lessons learned? And what was the role or contribution of the RDA materials or from this group or any other group? So yeah, so once again, we are looking forward to getting more country case studies. Please, don't think that if you are only planning on building a national PID strategy, you cannot contribute. Definitely, please contribute, even if your national PID strategy is in planning or preparation stage. And ideally, please send them to us by November or by the end of November of this year. And thank you so much. And with that, I am going to invite Veronique, who will speak about her case study for France.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Natasha, for the invitation. So today I'll give you a short update of the French national strategy for persistent identifiers and where we are now in our implementation. So the initiative is led by the Ministry of Higher Education and Research, and it's all about making research administration simpler, smoother, and better connected, both inside France and with the international PID community. So I start with a quick reminder of what the French strategy is about and what makes it specific. Then I'll focus on two main points where we are making progress. So where we stand with ORCID and the integration of researchers' identifiers, and our new institutional registry, ERNEST, which connects with ROR. So what's the French PID strategy? In one sentence, it's about making life easier for researchers and institutions. We want researchers to tell us once the information. That's our core principle. That means they provide their data only once, and it's shared automatically between the systems. So the goal is also to create a shared base of trusted data across institutions and to make French research more visible internationally. Why are we doing this? Researchers spend too much time on administrative tasks. And because in other countries like Australia, UK, PIDs already make a big difference. So researchers save days of administrative work every year. We want the same benefits, of course, less bureaucracy, more data, and better tools for managing research. So a few key ideas guide our strategy. First, of course, we use international standards, ORCID for people, ROR for institution. Second, we respect the autonomy of the university and the labs. There is no single national IT system. We focus on interoperability systems that talk to each other. And finally, we have a shared governance. Institution, agency, and the ministry work together step by step. Let's move to ORCID. In France, we have a national consortium, and this consortium brings together university and research organization. The goal is clear, to make ORCID part of every institutional system. Right now, we are focusing on three main things. First, national guidelines to make sure ORCID data are entered really consistently, especially for affiliation. Second, institutional certification. Only the employer can officially confirm where a researcher works. And third, improving data quality, because you know that clean data are key to interoperability. We also want to make ORCID useful for researchers. That's why we are building real life use cases. For example, we are connecting our national open archive with ORCID, so publication can move automatically between the two. We are also preparing automatic pre-filling of grant application using ORCID data. Now, let's move to institutions. ROR is the main reference for identifying research organization, but in France, our research landscape is more complex. We have many joint research units shared between a lot of institutions. And to manage this, we are creating a national registry of research structure called ERNEST. It complements ROR by capturing the specificity of the French system. So ERNEST, the registry, will be a trusted national database with richer data, including historical changes, scientific domains, and the supervising bodies. And it will stay, of course, synchronized with ROR to ensure international alignment. And the reference framework was finalized last month, defining objects like institution, research units, doctoral school, as well as their relationship and their life cycle. Right now, we are building the system. And next year, so ERNEST will go live. So to conclude, to have my 5 minutes, the French PID strategy is not only about immediate benefits, but also about long-term alignment with the international PID ecosystem adapted to the French context. On the people side, ORCID integration will simplify how researchers manage their data and make their work more visible. On the institutional side, ERNEST will complement ROR and reflect the reality of our joint research structure. At the same time, we are preparing guidance for the deployment of new identifiers, such as RED for research activities and PID instruments for the facilities. So I guess it's I managed it with 5 minutes. Thank you for your attention.
But I think we might go to our Australian case study next because it's an in-person one. So I'll introduce Professor Caroline Finch, who's the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Research at Edith Cowan University and the Chair of our National PID Strategy Advisory Group.
Thanks, Tash. And what a great session. It's really so exciting to hear that this really is a global activity that's really engaging everyone's interests. So as Tash said, I'm the Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Research at Edith Cowan University, and I'm actually the representative of all Deputy Vice-Chancellors on this group. So I bring a particular perspective from someone who's in an institution that needs to really drive activity in this area, be responsive to government needs and so forth. So we're working on implementing our PID strategy. So you saw in that Menti that many comments said that we are in the implementation phase or emerging phase. So we had our national PID strategy released in 2024. And the key thing around that, I guess, is the vision, which is something that me as a DVCR loves too, that the vision is to accelerate research and accelerate research quality, research impact, and also make sure that we do so efficiently. So there are a number of key drivers that are featured in many of the other national PID strategies. The development of the strategy was led by the ARDC and a number of other national senior task force stakeholders, and it had built very successfully on what we had already witnessed in Australia in terms of ORCID integration. So we have two main bodies in Australia that are involved as providing national PIDs infrastructure, fundamental blocks and services. So the AAF, the Australian Access Federation, is our Australian ORCID consortium lead, and they had successfully done a lot of work to drive ORCID uptake. They obviously contribute to the international perspective as well. The Australian Research Data Commons looks at all the other PIDs and works alongside ARF, and it does things like the data site. You'd all be aware of its registration agency for global raids, handle services and other things too. So we had very strong infrastructure already working in this place. So that means that what we could do since the start of last year is focus really on implementation. So the National Action Plan had three different components: strategic alignment, national capacity, capability uplift, and underpinning service delivery. I've already talked, we were already very strong in terms of the service delivery. But what I'm going to share with you is a little bit about the national capacity and capability uplift, and then what we're doing going forward. We were very clear from the outset that the implementation plan needed to be co-designed with all of the end users and the key groups. So we held stakeholder action group meetings with 3 different key groups we identified to start with. The first group being the institutions, universities like mine, medical research institutes and so forth, the funding bodies, the bodies that support research across the country, and facilities. So these are the National Commonwealth Research Infrastructure facilities. And we went to those 3 groups and we said, okay, we want to implement PIDs. What are the key issues for you? And those 3 dot points under each headings are what the stakeholders told us they needed. So, for example, in the university setting, I knew my colleagues and I needed to have a strong value proposition. In universities, we do research, but we also do teaching. We needed to be able to go back to our vice-chancellors, other university colleagues and say, this is why you need to invest in that. We also needed to look at what was the basic capability, maturity that we needed to implement that, and then give specific guidance to our researchers who are going to have to adopt many of these. Funders asked for information about how they could go about policy development, how they could implement identifiers, and they also wanted to develop action plans. And our facilities talked about similar things. They needed guidelines, but they wanted to look at how they could progress things both in terms of facilities, but in the instruments within those facilities. Once again, we had a national group, and I chair that, as Tash said, but it's ably coordinated by both ARDC and ARF. We got a statement there about it being open to all, so we went to all the stakeholder groups, and it was an opt-in model for people to be part of the stakeholder consultation and development. And as we've gone along, we've had more stakeholders come and join us when they see some of the progress on. So this is an example of very significant outcome already that we've had from the Australian Research Council. So the Australian Research Council is the premier body for funding research in Australia. It funds everything essentially except for medical research. And just a couple of months ago, it has identified a policy position and is going to be implementing it as a means of influencing behaviour. Again, I can say as the Deputy Vice-Chancellor, one of the major drivers of activities in getting universities and researchers to do things is give us money. So make the money conditional on it and we'll do anything you ask us. But the ARC has taken national leadership in this. So you see that going forward, all grants must have a DOI, all administering organisations must have a RAW, all named personnel must have an ORCID and they have to supply it. The research management system is actually going to, rather than many of these systems get set up and say, just tell us what your PIDs are, ARC is going to be feeding back into the system, so it really is two-way direction. And ARC now has a fair data policy. This is a very significant move for Australia, and we are expecting our National Health and Medical Research Council and others to follow very closely. So what about the next steps? So one of the things that we have spent quite a bit of time talking about and realising is that we've got those 2 big key infrastructure service groups, ARF and ARDC working together, and now we believe it's the time to bring the 2 together for a unified approach to PIDs. So next year we will have 1 national committee instead of 2 committees covering the 2 aspects. We will review progress against the National Collaborative Roadmap, and there was a review that's just been released in the past week, which is around our PID benchmarking toolkit. You'll hear more about that at this meeting, but for me some of the key takeaway messages are recognition that our level of ORCID adoption by researchers in Australia is so high that we can probably move towards mandating it. That's the high level of uptake. So we will continue to review the recommendations from that report, including that, and we will create a new action plan going forward because we have actually achieved a lot of what we set out to do and actually identified new directions for going forward. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Caroline. So we'll go to our third in-person speaker, which is Simon Porter, who is VP for Research Futures at Digital Science. And he's got an Aussie accent, but he's all the way from the UK, so he has done the long flight. You can trust him.
That's all right, yeah. So it's peak jet lag for me at the moment, which basically means I'm presenting drunk, although I haven't had anything to drink. So, as has been alluded to, the benchmarking toolkit was a project initiated by the ARDC to essentially support and underpin the PID strategy. So in its design, it's three things. It's a set of methodologies for benchmarking Australia's use of persistent identifiers in line with the 2024 PID strategy. It's a reusable toolkit of queries enabling repeat analysis. So wherever possible, we've not only made the measurement, but demonstrated how you could remake the measurement in a year's time or 2 years' time, whatever makes sense. Because it's the first time we've made the measurements too, we've also made a set of suggested recommendations / opportunities. So they hold no official bearing, but they are things to consider by the committee. So just a little bit more on the methodology, focusing on persistent identifier uptake as represented by DOIs. So we specifically focused on PIDs as represented in Crossref, DataCite, using RAW and RAID. And where possible, we've used open data sets, and where they were not readily available, we've made them snapshots of those data sets available on Google BigQuery, so you can follow the links in the report or the poster. And where additional information or context is required, we've used dimensions. So an example of additional context would be, what are the organisations that are not yet in RAW that have publications or patent information that we might want to consider approaching to include in RAW. If you read the report, and I hope you do, it's 100 pages of fun, but is quite nice. You'll see little breadcrumbs to the toolkit. So most tables will have a link to the bottom of a toolkit query. That will take you to the bottom of the report. It will tell you what tables have been used and where we've used non-open data sets. Will tell you why, and we'll also link you out to a notebook so you can see perhaps question some of my SQL querying abilities, but they're all of the annotations are there to be reused. And finally, in the last couple of minutes, we'll jump to some of the more interesting things. So what are the recommendations? So it's appropriate, I think, to describe our progress against a strategy that's only a year old as almost obviously a mixed scorecard, but there are some really nice things that are present in there already. So Australia does have remarkably high ORCID adoption, and that's not by fluke. It's because of the planned series of interventions that happened through the ORCID 2020 vision statements and the associated work that the entire Australian research community did around that. Because there's ORCID, strong ORCID adoption, it makes sense to take the next step. It makes sense to mandate ORCIDs on grant records, and because there are ORCIDs, it makes sense to create grant PIDs for grants because we have substantive metadata to associate with them, so people, raw affiliations. In fact, it probably makes sense to go a step further. If we're going to create grant records, why not create the associated RAID records? So the difference between a grant and a project is a grant is almost a contractual thing. It says you will do these things and these are the supervisors. A RAID is a living statement of who's on the project. It will include over time the postdocs. It will gather data as well. But at the point of creation, those two things are very similar. And in fact, because we have the grant, and we have the grant because we have the ORCID, so Kneebone's connected to, actually I don't know what it's connected to, but because of that connectivity, we can probably go a step further and create RAIDs for everything that we fund. And the crucial thing about that is when we create the grant, we know who the owning organisation is. So there is a way of saying we've created it and now it's over to you, University X, because you own that record. So something there. Trusted workflows. Another really interesting thing about the ORCID system is that we're now looking at ORCID records that have almost been asserted three ways. So we can see the assertion coming through from the publisher. We can see an assertion coming through from the CRIS system as well. So you get these systems that are validated by the publisher, validated by the individual because they've said this is mine, and also validated by the institution because it's run through their research information system, which makes it a strong foundation to build national reporting across the top of that, which is quite interesting. I think this is the most fascinating thing in the report is that Australia is ranked third in the world for dissertations that have a DOI. So up the top you've got Brazil, they've clearly nationalised something there, US by size, and then Australia. And what's fascinating about that is if you go to the repositories, you can see that we've got all of the information there. We've got UNSW is a beautiful example of a repository. You can see the work. It's got listed the supervisors with ORCIDs and the ORCID for the candidate. What is slightly frustrating, and it's across the board, is most of those ORCID records don't go into the dataset record. Another beautiful repository is RMIT, and you can see they've got a wonderful process for putting dissertations in. The ORCID is sitting on the front page of the PDF of the dissertation and not in the data. But with a few policy tweaks, we could have an amazing national set of mentorship of not only PhD candidates, but their supervisors, and it's a really fascinating way of collecting that information of people with ORCIDs who might go into research, but also might go into industry. So a really fascinating set and opportunity there that is just a few policy tweaks away. On areas that need improvement, we did have a look at data citation. So using the full text inside Dimensions, we were able to calculate which papers with Australian authors also cited data in DataCite. And it turns out that our colleagues in Europe are much better than doing that on average by field than we are. We're better than the global average, but our colleagues in Europe are doing much better again. So we've got something to learn there and probably a little bit more to invest in data citation literacy. Broader ORCID use, really fascinating. We're pretty good in ORCIDs. We've said that in publishing, in cross-reference journals. Where the world is not so good at ORCIDs is on the grey literature side of things. So we dropped to, say, from about 60% of objects having an ORCID on them in the publishing world to about 10% in the DataCite world. So there is like something to address there that's fairly important. And that it's actually the reverse for RAWs. So we're actually very poor with RAWs in the cross-ref metadata. There is a significant portion of objects in DataCite that have raw objects there. So it's interesting to see the different communities and what they've placed importance on. And the final one, and it goes for a lot of things, is we've got a lot of things in Australia that we've given a DOI, but we've perhaps not been great at connecting them. And the best example of that is IGSNs, international sample numbers. We've got over 5.8 million IGSN samples registered, which is great, except they don't link to anything. They're just this thing exists and here is its landing page. It's not linked to instruments or, in fact, people or organisations, and that's an opportunity to really capitalise on what we've got there. So, brief tour. There's heaps and heaps in that report. There's a poster outside, so please come and talk to me at any point during the conference.
All right, so we're going to switch it over now to a couple of virtual presenters. Thank you so much for being here in whatever horrific time zone I'm sure it is for you. We're going to start with Michelle Doran from Ireland.
So my name is Michelle Doran and I am the National Open Research Coordinator in Ireland, and I'm just going to update you on a few things that are happening with our own national PID strategy. It is peak school run time in my house at the moment, so if there's any background noise, I do apologise. I also just want to acknowledge the contributions of my colleague in HEAnet, Jenny O'Neill, towards the work that I'm going to speak at in a couple of minutes' time. Jenny unfortunately couldn't present this morning, but I want to just give her a shout out. So The project to deliver our national roadmap and strategy was initiated in response to Ireland's National Action Plan for Open Research 2022 to 2030. And the launch of the Action Plan in November 2022 inaugurated an ambitious national policy designed to meet three strategic objectives by 2030, to establish a culture of open research, to achieve 100% open access to research publications, and to enable fair research data and other outputs. And the implementation of Ireland's National Action Plan is being overseen by North. So under theme 2, achieving 100% open access to research publications, Action 4.4 of the National Action Plan highlights the need for national investment in persistent identifier infrastructure. As you're aware, this is key to ensuring consistent monitoring and improving interoperability across the research systems, and we have 2 specific actions in that regard. So the first is relates to the support for the Irish Orchid Consortium, and the second then relates to the development of a national PID roadmap. I'm sure many of you have maybe heard one of the project members speak about this in the past, so very briefly, who was involved in the PID strategy. More Brains, who I'm sure many of you are aware of, were contracted as consultants to undertake the strategy. We had a national PID task force, and there was extensive engagement with members of the Irish research community. So what was involved, and again, just briefly, there was a survey to enable a clear understanding of awareness and usage of PIDs in Ireland, as well as providing insights into how the community views the opportunities and challenges, a cost-benefit analysis, several focus groups, and a strategic SWOT analysis, followed by a PID task force and community workshop to validate the findings. The key project outputs then were a cost-benefit analysis and the recommendations on roadmap itself. And we also produced a series of 3 briefs targeting different stakeholders. So earlier this year then, we were awarded funding by the RDA Tiger Cascade grant to undertake a project which would create an EOSC-compatible national PID recommendation. So as I mentioned, the project is funded by the RDA Tiger Cascade grant, and it's a collaboration between North and HEAnet, which is Ireland's EOSC mandated organisation. And the goal is to develop a national PID recommendation that is fully aligned with EOSC frameworks, building directly on the work of the RDA National PID Strategies Interest Group, and especially their current focus on regional alignment and use case templates. We have 3 primary objectives. So to develop a national PID recommendation for Ireland that aligns with EOSC policy and best practices, to build on the RDA interest group's works, particularly, as I said, the current focus on regional alignment, and to deliver a reusable, openly available template and methodology that can support other countries in developing their own EOSC-aligned national PID strategies. So why are we undertaking this work at the moment? Well, the first very honest reason, I suppose, is that implementation does not necessarily follow recommendations. So indeed, our own PID strategy points out that following publication of the recommendation, other PID strategies have slowed down or even halted altogether, and that is the case here in Ireland. So the second bullet point there points to a position paper that was published earlier this year. There is quite a bit of momentum in Ireland around the implementation of an EOSC Ireland node. So we are leveraging that momentum at the moment and trying to strengthen the business case for the implementation of our national PID strategy and roadmap. And of course, we want to continue the very important relationship that we have with the National PID Strategies Interest Group. So the methodology is, I suppose, because the project is still ongoing, a comparative analysis of Ireland's roadmap, the EOSC PID policy, the RDA guide and checklist, comparison with the international context, or rather European context, I suppose, of FAIRcore for EOSC, Fair Impact and other initiatives, and then a stakeholder consultation process. And we had our first stakeholder meeting on the 24th of September. It was an online meeting, and members of the interest group were present at that meeting, and thank you for your input. So this points to some of the key findings around the strategic alignment comparison. So you can see with regards to vision, scope and the principles of the three main policies there, the EOSC PID policy, the Irish PID strategy and the interest group guide and checklist. And overall there is strong alignment, but also some opportunities for enhancement, particularly around governance, formalisation, technical interoperability and regular compliance assessment. And this latter point has become particularly relevant to this project, in fact, because the EOSC PID policy is being updated and will be published hopefully at the start of November, so we can use that to inform our final findings before submitting it to the RDA Tiger funders. So there are some other comparative analysis findings around in the table there around key components mapping, so PID types, governance, use cases, infrastructures, sustainability and interoperability. And just to talk about our next steps then, is to finalise the review of the recommendations based on that stakeholder meeting on the 24th of September. Those recommendations are available on the link that is on the slides there. The webpage unfortunately is down at the moment, and it's just a little too early in the morning to find out why. So I will make sure that that is back online later on today, which will be the middle of the night for you in Australia in case you can't sleep because of jet lag. We have some one-to-one stakeholder consultations planned, and we also have planned to develop the use case with IRL, which is where our national ORCID and data site consortia are based. Hopefully, as I said, we can review the updated EOSC PID policy ahead of submitting our final project deliverables, and we will be presenting a national workshop on the 7th of November. That will be a hybrid meeting for anyone who would like to join, and I will make sure that the Zoom link for that is shared on the webpage when the webpage is back up and running later on. So I'm certain I've gone far over my 5 minutes, so I might pass you back to the room there.
Thank you so much, Michelle. So on to our next digital presenter, who is Antonia Schrader from Germany.
Yeah, hi guys, thank you very much for having me. Hope you hear me okay, and I'll now share my slides. Give me a second. Does it look good for you? Okay. So great. So thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the organizers and the session hosts for making it possible to speak to you virtually. Unfortunately, I can't make it to Australia, so it's good morning from me from Germany and good day for you. So I'm very delighted to be able to provide another update on the developments relating to the PID roadmap for Germany. As you might remember, I already did so in the very first beginning of this interest group in 2023. So, but I just wanted to state or give you some background of our, let's say, requirements here in Germany. So today I'm speaking on behalf of the PID Network Germany project, which has received third-party funding from the German Research Foundation, DFG, for 3 years, starting in 2023. And the PID roadmap for Germany is being developed as part of the project. And at the moment, we are in the process of collecting all findings from the project and drafting the document. Yeah, but now I'd like to address the fundamental question, why is a dedicated PID roadmap for Germany so crucial right now? So as you might know, the PID landscape and of course the overall research landscape in Germany is very heterogeneous, defined by a federation of 16 constituent states, each largely autonomous in its internal organization methods. So consequently, there are no overall centralized solutions. Rather, individual entities often prefer in-house developments over uniform out-of-the-boxes approaches. And this complexity is compounded by the necessity of rigorous compliance with the GDPR. So furthermore, a key difficulty is navigating the hierarchical challenge. So the end users and implementers are often not the institutional decision makers, necessitating a flexible strategy that earns buy-in forms or stakeholders. So this resulted in widely varying degrees of PID usage and adoption across Germany. A coordinated approach is therefore needed to support the nationwide uptake of PIDs. So we see the roadmap as a concise document intended for research funding organizations, research institutions that operate infrastructures, institutional decision makers, and scientific and cultural communities. The roadmap is intended to highlight the need to develop a national action plan for PIDs and pave the way for its implementation. This roadmap has been shaped by insights from a series of 10 co-creation workshops on KPIs, which can be found via our PID monitor, user experience, and also a quantitative survey, which was conducted in 2024. So a total of 126 academic and non-academic institutions across the country participate in this survey, making it the most extensive study of PIDs conducted in Germany to date. And we will publish a paper and the survey date later in this year. And of course, we also had a lot of consultations with national and international communities, such as the National Research Data Alliance, EOSC, and the RDA, of course. So the recommendations of the German PID roadmap will cover the following areas of action: creating standardized workflows, promoting PID awareness, assigning PIDs to different resources types, harmonizing metadata, developing a sustainable governance model, and creating accessible infrastructure and services. We are currently executing a call for implementation, inviting 2 German scientific institutions to apply for a 3-month funded pilot phase. And the primary goal of this phase is to regularly test, evaluate, and if necessary, revise the feasibility and practicability of the PID guidelines we already created. And those findings, of course, will inform the PID roadmap too. So following this pilot, we will launch a public consultation phase at the end of this year to revise the draft of the PID roadmap. And I think this crucial step will allow a wide range of stakeholders to contribute suggestions, ultimately broadening the roadmap scope and maximizing its national acceptance. Yeah, and the final roadmap is scheduled for the publication in the first half of 2026. And looking ahead, we anticipate proposing a follow-up project to facilitate the expansion of this roadmap into a comprehensive national action plan for PIDs. Yes, this was very briefly an overview of our plans. So please feel free to reach out to us and yeah, visit our website if you'd like to get more information. And yeah, I'm happy to join this interest group. Yeah, so thank you very much for having me.
we're going to move to our last digital presentation, which is a pre-recorded session from the Latin American case study.
ORCID Lab. The main goal of this project is to strengthen the use of the PIDs in university and research institutions across Latin America. We aim to improve visibility and collaborations among institution research and repositories. In simple words, we want to make research data easy to share and connect both locally and globally. Through ORCID, we connect researchers and institutions in a clean and organized way. By promoting ORCID ID, we ensure each researcher work is recognized and linked into their profile wherever they publish. This will trust visibility and stronger collaboration across Latin America research community. To make this possible, we divide the project into two main parts, each with a specific goal and activity. The first part started with sessions including research, library, and technology team to give context, align expectations, and find how each area could support PID adaptations. The second part, each institution choose the system way to integrate, and this stage give hands-on support from test installation to technical assistance. Our goal is to make sure everything runs smoothly and institutions feel confident using these new workflows. Thanks to this process, they've achieved a stronger integration and more trust using PIDs. One key result of the project is the growth and visibility of our region network. We now have around 100 members institutions across Latin America, including university and research center. They have also connect systems like repository, quiz platforms, data tools, keeping everything consistent and well linked across the region. These are our main numbers from the system we have integrated. So far, we have over 153 total integrations. Each one connects an institution system with ORCID, sharing readable and update information about research in the world. Our digital strategy helps institutions and researchers management their digital identity in a stronger and clearer way. We motivate each member to take care of their data, their work, and their institutional presence in the global research community. This helps keep everything connected, readable, and accurate. As a part of our work to improve visibility, we created a visibility portal. This platform lets institutions and researchers see all their integration results in one place, affiliations, publications, and connect systems. In Colombia, we also have a national integration that makes institutions and their research more visible across the country. This portal helps to track progress, promote collaboration, and strengthen their presence in the ORCID ecosystem. In this part, I would like to show how the ORCID integrations work with WIDO. WIDO allows research to connect their ORCID profiles and synchronize their information easy. We send an email with the through Git explaining step by step how to make and connect using the links shown in the screen. This simple process keeps research profile accurate, update, and linked in the institutions. We're also working on a consortium project focused in research data repositories. This project uses Dataverse and DataSite to manage the shared repository with several institutions in Colombia. The main goal is to support open science, improve collaboration, and increase the visibility of our members. These are the main motivation behind our work. We want to work together to make collaboration stronger and build the real research community. We also promote the open science in Colombia, helping national research become more visible around the world. Another goal is to support data repository and reduce cost by sharing technical solutions. Here we can see how the DOIs have improved to the visibility of Colombian research. Before, data was often invisible, hard to find, and not citable, limits the impact. Now, with dataset DOIs throughout Papyrus, each dataset is citable, easy to discover, and preserved for the long term. We can also track usage and meet funder requirements, making Colombian research more visible and valuable around the world. After see the impact of DOI on research visibility, I like to show one of the main platforms that makes it possible, Papyrus. Papyrus is our national research data platform development together with the consortium. It works with DataSite to assign DOIs, making research easy to find, cite, and preserve over time. You can visit the platform at papyrus-datos.co and see how institutions across Colombia use it to share and manage their data. As a part of this project, we organize several activities and webinars to help institutions adopt PIDs and use the repository. These sessions including technical training, data management plan guidelines, and workshop on metadata and transversal variables. Also gave live demonstration to show institutions how apply these ideas and their ecosystems. Once again, I am Paula Saavedra, Project Manager at Consortium. Can you scan the QR code to get my contact details? I will be happy to stay in touch or answer any question you may have. Thank you for the space and allow me to be here sharing this presentation with you.
How good was Paula to fit all that in? That's really good. Okay, so we're coming to the open discussion part now. There's been a lot of information thrown at you, and we've obviously gone a lot over the 5 minutes, and we've had some technical issues, but perhaps that suits everyone at this time of the afternoon. So hopefully you've learnt a bit about what's happening in other countries. Actually, is Wim here? Oh, I can't see you. Yeah. Did you want to kick off discussion? So Wim Hugo from the Chief Technology Officer of DANS in the Netherlands is going to talk about the EOSC PID compliance toolkit. Did you want to come up, or do you want to do it? Yeah.
If I could use 5 minutes.
Yes, please.
Yeah. And start by addressing maybe something that came through in the last presentation, which is that somehow having a persistent identifier attached to something makes it persistent for the long term, because that is one of the things that I quickly want to discuss. Okay, so in the FAIRcore for EOSC project, together with our partnership in Fair Impact, it was mentioned by Dorf, we developed a compliance assessment toolkit that specifically focuses on measuring compliance with the EOSC PID policy. But early on in the process, through stakeholder engagement, it emerged that actually the main purpose here would not be to determine compliance with the EOSC PID policy, but to develop national or institutional policies that are aligned with the EOSC PID policy and determine to what extent institutions and/or their stakeholders complied with such a policy. So that capability is now included into the compliance assessment toolkit. One can have a look at the assessments, if I can manage to induce a click. If people would make these assessments public, then you can go and have a look at it. Worth mentioning is that these policies are different in terms of both whether the provisions are mandatory or optional and to which stakeholder in the ecosystem they apply. Because persistent identifier provision is actually quite complicated in the sense that many moving parts... Could you please speak into the microphone? Oh, sorry. Okay. There are many moving parts to the PID ecosystem, and each participant needs to do their bit to make it work. And I think this one point of failure is not sort of higher up in the supply chain. The authorities and the providers such as DataSite or ORCID or whoever, it comes down to the manager that remains the link between the object or thing being referenced and the persistent identifier that was issued with it. So it's quite important for managers to meet a sort of minimum set of performance requirements. The other thing I quickly want to highlight, I don't think we have time to really look at the assessments themselves, but as part of this work and with a great amount of help from the Fair Impact Project, Josephine Nordling is here and she was instrumental in helping with this. We compiled a knowledge base of persistent identifier stacks or ecosystems in the provider sense up to the point of a manager. And we've included the work in this interest group from national strategies so that you can see which persistent identifiers have been endorsed or recommended by different countries. But you can also look at other facets such as the number of resolvers, how the resolution topology works, whether there are meta-resolvers providing access to those, the types of namespaces that they use, and so on. However, I want to stress the final point here is not only do I think we should potentially urge national and institutional users to make better use of this facility, but a very important point, we've defined this measurement, if you will, a concise metric that we call GUPRI, whether a persistent identifier is globally unique, persistent, and resolvable. And the scores that you see there by way of this color coding is the design considerations for that persistent identifier. In other words, was it designed to be globally unique, persistent, and resolvable? But it doesn't actually measure whether it is the case in practice. And for me, this is a significant issue. DataCite is the only persistent identifier stack at the current time that provides us with the ability to randomly sample a number of persistent identifiers and to track their performance over time, which is something that you need to do this. There are billions of handles or arcs. We cannot sample them all. So we need a strategy for finding a representative sample of these persistent identifier services and track not only service availability, but also persistence mean and resolvability over time. So I think one of the aspects that one could look at is to maybe develop a working group concept under this interest group to take these concepts of proper monitoring and service quality assessment for the persistent identifier ecosystem somewhat forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Bim. I'm astonished at the depth and breadth of work that's going on PIDs and national PID strategies globally. Does anyone have any questions, comments, suggestions? Yes. Could you introduce yourself too, please?
Milan Oysterček from Slovenia. First thing, maybe one comment about this, how to find different PIDs. Use OpenAir, Graph and OpenAlex, and you will find also some other PIDs, not only DOIs, and it's possible also to make evaluation of sustainability of these PID servers. This is first thing. One thing for all European presenters. We have problems in Slovenia with this ORCID identifier because researchers need to establish this identifier. And another thing is in this ORCID identifier that some researchers have more than one ORCID identifier. How you solve this? That in our country it's not possible to give, how I say, order. Every researcher need to have ORCID identifier. How you solve this in Europe? Because of GDPR, I think this is a problem.
Anybody like to respond or? No?
Yeah, thanks for that. We do have a process. I'm Brian Minahan from Orchid. There is a process if you do happen to have two Orchid IDs that meant use two different email addresses, and then once you contact us, we would have one resolved to the other, to your preferred one. So there is a way of resolving that. Somewhat common. So
we don't have permission because we have a database of all researchers. We have unique ID of researchers, but we don't have permission to give Orchid identifier for researchers. They need to give to us.
It's up to them. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, Milan, I just wanted to add there are legitimate reasons to have two Orchid IDs as an individual. There are people who have private profiles or profiles that contain very sensitive information that they only want to share with particular people, and they want to have a public profile that's separate from that. You can link them behind the scenes. The point there is if the ID itself is unique and is not reused for a different person, one person having more than one ID doesn't break the system. I think there are legitimate reasons. Think people doing certain kinds of very sensitive medical research, national security research and so on, where people would actually want to have two IDs and keep the different information in both records.
I might also take a moment to try to address this. So although obviously Canada's not in Europe, we do have to follow rules that are similar enough to GDPR, and the answer to, I think, the question of how do you convince all the scholars to do ORCID when there is no stick that you can wield, the answer is the biggest carrot possible. And I think part of this involves ensuring that PIDs are adopted widely and across all key stakeholder institutions. We know, for example, that funders lead the way. So if your government entities can take a certain kind of leadership and implement ORCID and register grant DOIs for the awards that they are funding, and your local publishers are implementing ORCID and DOIs in various ways in their systems, the more that these PIDs are integrated across key national platforms, the more you're going to find ways that your scholars are going to want to do this rather than sort of having to force everyone. It doesn't mean you're going to get 100% compliance, and I don't necessarily know that that's our strategic goal and that's our pie in the sky goal. I don't know how feasible it is concretely, but we're going to get an increasing number, and we are seeing an increasing amount of adoption as more and more Canadian institutions show the value proposition by directly implementing it into their platforms, and scholars say, oh, this is great, now we can enter once, reuse often, and as ORCID says.
Caroline, she's...
What we've done in my...
Sorry, just wait for the... Yeah.
What we've done at my university and many other Australian universities is we recognise that not only do we rely on external funding, but we have internal funding schemes. So no researcher in my university will get any money from my portfolio unless we have their ORCID online. So we make it, that way. Yeah, they can choose not to provide it, but then they don't get the benefit of the funding. And I think that's been one of the things that have contributed to our high success rate across Australia.
It's not possible because we have researcher ID on national level. In our case, it's not possible because we have researcher ID on national level, and so we don't have possibility because of GDPR to, if researcher don't want, then this is impossible to do. Another thing is with ROR identifier. We have some organizations with very granular ROR identifiers, to laboratory level, to institute level, and to research organization and faculty level. So this is also big challenge.
I think the good news is that you're not alone, that these are very broad challenges for everyone, and best practices are emerging as we all try to do this together, and that's hopefully what this group can help develop for everyone. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? Yeah.
Hi, Matt from DataSite. I just wanted to kind of just double down on what John just said about national approaches in this group. So sharing best practices is really good, but also recognizing that every community, every country, every region has local nuances and context that is important. And so as a global open scholarly infrastructure provider, it's really important that we can partner with you in the national context, in the regional context, to understand how we can better support you. And I think I speak for all national or global open infrastructure providers, is that this is fantastic, that we're sharing, finding commonalities, things that we can do technically, socially to support you, but also working with you to set up the local infrastructure and the tooling and services that is needed in that context. So just kind of making that comment.
That's great, Matt, and that's a great segue into a lot of people ask me why don't we have an international PID strategy, but actually a lot of the funding and the drivers happen at a national level or at a regional level, and you know that what we actually need to do is respect that and coordinate between the emerging national PID strategies and regional PID strategies that are happening, which I think we've heard so much about today. So I'm going to let you all off the hook as we're coming up to 6 o'clock. So well done, everyone, for surviving your national PID strategies session. Thanks for your contributions. And yeah, if you haven't joined the group, please do, and we will post further updates through that mechanism. Thanks.